we have to acknowledge is, and I agree with what Senator Menendez said. The system is not working. It's not working. And the reason why it's not working is because of the regulatory burden of we have to stop something from never happening again. What's really happened is the big banks got bigger. They got massively bigger. That's not working for small communities. So Congress has to address that from a meaningful way on a regulatory basis and a statutory basis, not by adding more layers to try to fix a problem Congress created in the first place.
You are about to watch a Republican congressman expose exactly what's wrong with Washington, an unelected, unaccountable, out-of-control agency that spits in the face of Congress and does whatever it wants with zero consequences. The CFPB is a rogue operation, and Democrats love it that way because it lets them regulate your life without ever having to answer for it. This congressman just laid it all bare: the overreach, the arrogance, the unconstitutional power grab. And the left has no answer. Stay right here, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, because we are breaking this whole thing down and it is damning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by observing, I served in the House, so I understand the view of most House members with regard to this chamber. And despite that, Congressman Donalds was kind enough to come over here and testify. And to all the witnesses who have been very patient during a discussion that may not have been central to what you thought we were going to be here to talk about, I want to thank you for your patience. I'd like to bring it back to a discussion about an aspect of the CFPB's policy. And what I'm specifically referring to is it strikes me as kind of shocking that the CFPB applies this disparate impact theory to auto lending. Congress demonstrates exactly what it thinks of this by repealing that rule. And then they turn around and say, oh, okay, well, in that case, we'll expand it and we'll apply it in a whole new way. It strikes me as a brazen overreach. And I wonder, to what extent do either of you, if you care to comment on this, think that that kind of action is, I guess, the inevitable result of a construct where Congress has no control over this entity? Congress has no say. They have no reason to care whether what they're doing is completely contrary to the wishes of Congress because they know there's nothing Congress can do about it. We don't control their budget. We don't even indirectly control their budget. We have no say over this. And I'm wondering if either of you think that the unconstitutional design contributes to this kind of overreach. Congressman?
It absolutely does. There's no doubt about it. Because they don't have to come and sit before you gentlemen here in the Senate or us in the House, because they don't have to go through the appropriations process, they largely do what they want. There's some conversations with whoever the president might be at the time, but other than that, they're completely unaccountable. From what I hear over at the CFPB office building, they got the best in town and the greatest pizza oven. Why? Because all they do is just go from company to company to company. They do their investigations, they levy fines, and they keep on moving. To a broader point, if you want to address the core issue, and this is actually to, I think, Senator Warner, Senator Van Hollen's point about access to capital, you don't do it by then leveraging an unaccountable agency to have more of a regulatory burden on the financial institution, because MDIs and CDFIs are not going to solve that problem. The reason why we have banks closing in communities all across the country is because of the regulatory burden that has happened since Dodd-Frank became law in 2010. That is the reason. So if we're going to be serious about this and try to find access to capital issues, it's not by allowing the CFPB to do more. It's actually about reining them in once and for all, and then re-examining the banking regulatory structure here on Capitol Hill that will allow the industry to flourish.
Thanks very much. Mr. Westhill?
I would just say, generally, I am concerned about the insulation that the CFPB has from congressional oversight and authority. It's problematic in a number of different respects, including the insulation that the director has. It's outside a little bit the scope of what we're discussing here in this hearing. But I'll say that, I think there's a lot of legitimate criticism, reasonable criticism of the rise of these sorts of federal agencies, that there could potentially be a legitimate fourth branch of government growing out of these agencies, and that's really problematic to our constitutional separation of powers and structure.
Senator, real quick, if I may, the one thing we have to acknowledge is, and I agree with what Senator Menendez said, the system is not working. It's not working. And the reason why it's not working is because of the regulatory burden of we have to stop something from never happening again. What's really happened is the big banks got bigger. They got massively bigger. That's not working for small communities. So Congress has to address that from a meaningful way on a regulatory basis and a statutory basis, not by adding more layers to try to fix a problem Congress created in the first place.
Yeah. Thank you very much,
Brown,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Brown. I think I'm just compelled.
This congressman was absolutely, unequivocally right, and every single word he said should terrify every American who still believes in the Constitution. The CFPB answers to nobody. Not Congress. Not the people. Nobody. They don't go through appropriations. They don't face oversight. They just roll from company to company, levy fines, and keep the machine running, all while eating gourmet pizza on your dime. That's not a government agency. That's a cartel with a federal badge. And the Democrats built it that way on purpose. They don't want accountability. They want a weapon they can aim at industries they hate without ever having to stand before voters and defend it. When Congress repealed the disparate impact rule on auto lending, the CFPB didn't blink. They just expanded it somewhere else. That is pure authoritarian arrogance, and Democrats have cheered it every step of the way. The congressman nailed the real villain here, Dodd-Frank. That monstrosity didn't save small communities, it crushed them. The big banks got bigger, small banks disappeared, and working-class Americans lost access to capital while Washington bureaucrats patted themselves on the back. The answer was never more regulation, it was always reining this beast in and rebuilding a system that actually serves the people instead of punishing them. This is what real oversight looks like. This is what fighting for constitutional government sounds like. The left wants you distracted, don't let them win.